I don't think that style is ever going to win championships. Not with this style of play, it won't win.
I think I did pretty good. Like I don't grade myself off shot making.
Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Coming here was just a piece to fill whatever needs to be fulfilled. Defensively, been extremely solid.
What?
Brunson drives, pulls up, shot is up, bank shot is good. The Brunson burner has been lit.
They dominated us 4-0, but genuinely, I do feel like we are the better team.
Bro, I'm out, man. That nigga's tripping.
James Edward Harden Jr., born August 26, 1989. The NBA's greatest championship repellent might not be bad luck or injuries. It might be James Harden. After another disappointing playoff exit, that conversation is getting harder to ignore. In the 2026 Eastern Conference Finals, Harden and the Cleveland Cavaliers were swept by the Knicks in 4 games. Over the series, Harden averaged just 16 points, 4 rebounds, and 3.5 assists while shooting 37% from the field and a brutal 17.6% from three-point range. For a player brought in to help push Cleveland over the top, those numbers weren't just disappointing, they were familiar. Because if you followed Harden's career, you've seen this movie before. The blown 3-1 lead in Oklahoma City, the countless playoff collapses in Houston, the injuries and disappointment in Brooklyn, the second-round flameout in Philadelphia, the failed experiment with the Clippers, and now Cleveland. Different teammates, different coaches, different systems, same ending. At some point, the excuses start running out, and the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. James Harden is one of the greatest offensive players the game has ever seen. An MVP, a scoring champion, a future Hall of Famer. But for whatever reason, whenever a championship gets within reach, something always seems to go wrong. And after nearly 2 decades of evidence, these are the biggest reasons why. What happened? Let's talk about it. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth. Let's get it, man. Like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know who I should do next. James Harden is a 6'5" shooting guard from Los Angeles, California. A McDonald's All-American at Artesia High School, Harden quickly established himself as one of the nation's top prospects before starring at Arizona State. During his 2 seasons, he averaged over 19 points per game, won Pac-10 Player of the Year honors, and entered the 2009 NBA Draft viewed as one of the safest future stars available. Selected 3rd overall by the Oklahoma City Thunder, Harden joined a young core that included Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook. While he accepted a 6-man role and helped the Thunder reach the 2012 NBA Finals, contract disagreements led to his departure before the start of the following season. The move sent him to Houston, where his career exploded. Over the next decade, Harden became one of the most productive offensive players the league has ever seen. He won the 2018 MVP award, captured 3 scoring titles, led the NBA in assists, and routinely carried Houston to 50-plus win seasons. At his peak, he was putting up numbers that rivaled some of the greatest players in basketball history. The problem was that as impressive as the stats became, the championship never arrived. When Houston fell short, Harden sought a fresh start in Brooklyn. When Brooklyn failed, he moved to Philadelphia. When Philadelphia disappointed, he joined the Clippers. And when the Clippers came up short, he landed in Cleveland, chasing what many believed could finally be the perfect situation. Instead, it produced the same result: another playoff collapse, another disappointing exit, and another chapter added to one of the most puzzling championship droughts the NBA has ever seen. Stunt number 1, he kept looking for better situations instead of becoming better. Nobody can question James Harden's talent. You don't become an MVP, win 3 scoring titles, lead the league in assists, and build a Hall of Fame resume without putting in an incredible amount of work. But when I look at his career, I don't see a player who lacked ability. I see a player who spent too much time searching for the perfect championship situation instead of addressing the flaws that repeatedly prevented him from winning one. That's an important distinction. Throughout his career, Harden has been given opportunities most superstars never receive. He played with Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook in Oklahoma City. He had nearly a decade in Houston with Chris Paul, Dwight Howard, and more rosters built specifically around his strengths. He joined Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving in Brooklyn, teamed up with Joel Embiid in Philadelphia. He formed another star pairing with Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers. Then he landed in Cleveland, a 64-win team that many believed was one piece away from a championship run. Yet every step somehow ended with the same disappointment. At some point, it becomes fair to ask whether Harden was simply unlucky or whether the same weaknesses kept following him wherever he went. What stands out to me is that Harden always seemed convinced the next situation would be the answer. When Oklahoma City ended, Houston was the answer. When Houston fell short, Brooklyn was. Then Philadelphia became the answer, then the Clippers, then Cleveland. But championships are usually won by players who become obsessed with eliminating weaknesses. Michael Jordan improved as a passer, LeBron James became a better shooter and post player, Steph Curry added strength and defensive effort, and Nikola Jokic transformed his conditioning and leadership. The great champions evolve because they understand that talent alone eventually reaches a ceiling. Harden, meanwhile, remained largely the same player for most of his prime. An offensive genius, an elite playmaker, a regular season superstar, but many of the same playoff concerns that existed in Houston were still being discussed years later. Different jerseys, different teammates, different coaches, same questions. It starts with a player who kept looking for a better environment when what he really needed was to become a better championship player himself. Nearly 20 years into his career, Harden still hasn't shown he possesses that gear, and that's where the pattern may have started. Stunt number 2, being a defensive liability. For years, whenever people discuss James Harden's playoff shortcomings, the conversation almost always focused on his offense. Did he score enough? Did he disappear in big games? Did he settle for too many threes? While those criticisms are fair, I think they've distracted people from an even bigger problem that has followed Harden throughout his career: his defense. The truth is that championship basketball is different from the regular season. During the regular season, teams are often too busy preparing for the next opponent to spend an entire game targeting one player's weaknesses. In the playoffs, everything changes. Opponents have days to prepare. Every possession matters, every weakness gets magnified, and for years, Harden's defense has been one of the easiest weaknesses for elite teams to attack. The most recent example came against the Knicks. Jalen Brunson wasn't avoiding Harden, he was actively seeking him out. Whenever possible, New York worked to create switches that forced Harden into uncomfortable situations. That's what championship-level players do. They identify the weakest defender on the floor and repeatedly attack until the opposing team is forced to adjust. The problem for Cleveland was that there often wasn't an adjustment available. This isn't a new criticism either. Throughout Harden's career, opponents have consistently viewed him as a player they could target when the games matter most. Whether it was Houston, Brooklyn, Philadelphia, the Clippers, or now Cleveland, the scouting report remains largely the same. Make him defend, force him to move his feet, wear him down, attack him possession after possession. To Harden's credit, he has had stretches where he looked engaged defensively. He's stronger than most people give him credit for and has occasionally held his own in the post. But championship defense isn't about having good moments, it's about bringing consistent effort every night, especially when the stakes are the highest. When you're a superstar, you can't just be great offensively, you have to avoid becoming a liability on the other end. That's what separates many champions from everyone else. Michael Jordan played defense, Kobe played defense, LeBron played defense, Giannis plays defense. Even Steph Curry worked tirelessly to become respectable enough that teams couldn't simply hunt him out every possession. Meanwhile, nearly 20 years into his career, opponents still view Harden as someone they can attack. That's why his defense has quietly been one of the biggest reasons the championship continues to stay out of reach. Stunt number 3, Father Time is finally catching up. For most of James Harden's career, there was always one reason to believe the next opportunity would be different. He was still in his prime. When Houston fell short, Harden was still one of the best players in basketball. When Brooklyn collapsed, many blamed injuries. When Philadelphia came up short, people pointed to coaching decisions, roster construction, or Joel Embiid's playoff struggles. Even after the Clippers failed to break through, there were still those who believed Harden had enough left in the tank to make one more serious run. But after what happened against the Knicks, it's becoming harder to make those arguments. At some point, every superstar reaches the stage of their career where the league stops adjusting to them and they have to start adjusting to the league. Harden appears to be entering that phase now. The first step isn't quite as explosive, the ability to consistently beat defenders off the dribble isn't what it once was, and the burst that allowed him to create separation whenever he wanted has slowly started to fade. The numbers against New York told the story. Facing the biggest opportunity of his Cleveland tenure, Harden averaged just 16 points per game while shooting 37% from the field and an alarming 17.6% from three. Those aren't the numbers of a player carrying a championship contender. Those are the numbers of a player struggling to perform at the level required to win at the highest stage. What's even more concerning is that opponents know exactly how to defend him. Harden's game has been studied for nearly 2 decades. Teams understand his tendencies, they know where he wants to get on the floor, they know how to force him into uncomfortable shots, and unlike 10 years ago, he no longer has the same athletic advantages to overcome those adjustments. That's why this playoff run felt different. For the first time, it felt less like Harden simply had a bad series and more like the window may actually be closing. Cleveland now faces difficult questions about its future, and it's fair to wonder whether Harden will ever again be viewed as a legitimate number 1 or number 2 option on a championship team. The cruel reality is that championship opportunities become harder to find as the player gets older. Harden has already had more chances than most Hall of Famers ever receive, and yet the championship remains the one accomplishment that continues to slip through his fingers. All in all, James Harden's championship drought isn't the result of one bad series or one unlucky break. It's the result of the same issues showing up over and over again, regardless of where he played. All ended differently, but somehow reached the same destination. Harden kept searching for better situations, but the weaknesses that hurt his teams in the playoffs always seemed to follow him. His defense remained a target, his postseason performances became increasingly inconsistent, and now age is beginning to remove the physical advantages that once made him nearly unstoppable. None of this takes away from what Harden accomplished. He's one of the greatest scorers and playmakers the NBA has ever seen, a former MVP and a future Hall of Famer. Most players would dream of having half the career he's had, but championships are judged by a different standard. At 36 years old, Harden is running out of opportunities to change the narrative. If a championship ever comes, it will likely be in a much smaller role than the ones he spent most of his career playing, because history has repeatedly shown that when James Harden is one of the main pieces on a contender, the ending doesn't change. Salute, much respect. But for these reasons, James Harden may be the biggest championship repellent. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth, and I'm out.